Buongiorno a tutti.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome at the announcement of the selection for the 83rd International Film Festival of La Biennale di Venezia. We are connected from the library of the Historical Archive of La Biennale di Venezia and Paolo Lughi, press office of Biennale Cinema. I am sitting close to Alberto Barbera, the director of the cinema department of La Biennale di Venezia. He will tell us the titles of the movies participating in the festival. But first of all, allow me to invite the president of La Biennale di Venezia, Pietrangelo Buttafuoco, to welcome you all with his speech. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. First of all, I want to express my gratitude to Alberto Barbera, to him, to his team, and my gratitude to all my colleagues in La Biennale. I want to thank the institutions, the Ministry of Culture, the City of Venice, the Veneto region, the Superintendency for Archaeology, Fine Arts and Landscape of the Metropolitan City of Venice and its lagoon, our neighbors, the Navy, the Italian Navy, and all those that are part of the team of Alberto Barbera and of La Biennale who contribute to the best possible preparation of the International Film Festival of La Biennale di Venezia. I want to thank our sponsors who support the 83rd International Film Festival, main sponsor MasterCard, Campari, Armani Beauty and Cartier, and then Peugeot, ITA, Intimissimi, Canal Plus, DeLonghi, Repower, Consorzio Tutela del Vino Valdobbiadene Prosecco, Google, Telios, Audible, Major Center Media, Canon, RTL 102.5. I want to thank RAI, that is back in Venice as main broadcaster of Biennale Cinema 2026, and Rai Cultura, the official channel broadcasting the International Film Festival. I want to thank once again Alessandro, our Minister of Culture, Alessandro Giuli, and the Ministry of Culture for Cinema, Audiovisual, supporting the Biennale College project, and the other institutions, and our sponsor, main sponsor, Chanel. I want to thank, finally, and I want to greet Count Giuseppe Volpi di Misurata, the person who thought of the film festival and developed it. The director and curator of this film festival, Alberto Barbera, will announce the movies that will take part in the 83rd edition of this festival. And the Venice Film Festival has the function of discovering and presenting new names and new formulas, examining the different aspects, the different prospects, the different geographies of cinema today. But the festival, together with the other activities of La Biennale, is also undoubtedly recognized as an extraordinary space, an extraordinary space of freedom of expression, where they promote an open dialogue and cultural diversity. La Biennale, on its part, as an institution that has been organizing this film festival, has also the sensitive task of sensitizing and valorizing the values that emerge from the selection carried out by the selecting committee and by the artistic director. I am really happy that Alberto Barbera has accepted to continue his function for a couple of years more. Thank you again, and greet him with a round of applause, please. If you can, I was referring to those who are connected online with us. Allow me to remember again the concrete actions undertaken for research and experimentation that are perhaps less known than the film festival, but that are equally important. The initiatives undertaken by La Biennale to prolong creativity of the film festival after its conclusion, and this in connection with the different departments of La Biennale as an institution, therefore together with the different artistic directors. For cinema, La Biennale is working through the whole year with an incredible systematic approach towards the territory for the strengthening of our memory and for our young people, and therefore for the future of our society. We have been organizing in Venice for years in a large room at the municipality headquarters, the Fuori Mostra initiative that has attracted more and more viewers, students and residents alike. In Venice and Mestre, we have organized for years Biennale Cinema for the schools with screenings presented by cinema critics and that have been attended by thousands of students. For the citizens, we have the pre-opening of the film festival in Lido this year. We will celebrate a great master of Italian cinema, Tinto Brass, the Venetian director, a genius in Italian cinema who is up to the great tradition we have of literature and music. We are the land of Gioacchino Rossini and Giovanni Boccaccio. Allow me to stress that in Venice, in the Arsenale, La Biennale last June presented its important new headquarters for the Historic Archive. It is a new beginning. It will be the center, International Center for Research on Contemporary Arts. And it is hosted in a building close to Le Corderie, 8,000 square meters, restored thanks to the PNRR through the complementary plan for the architectural heritage. And we thank again the Ministry of Culture once again. We thank the municipality of Venice, the city of Venice, for this permanent institutions that will be open during the whole year in the Historic Center of Venice. It will be the reference for students, scholars, institutions from all over the world, but also, I want to stress this, but also for the citizens of Venice. And this is the meaningful result of the increase in the funds devoted to archives. And for cinema, the reason why we're here today, for cinema, we have acquired the important archives of Tullio Kesic, Paolo Valmarana, and of Professor Brunetta, who has written a story of the International Film Festival. These funds make the archive of La Biennale a real reference for scholars and experts in cinema all over the world. Among the events for the presentation of the new headquarters of the archive for cinema, following the conversation between the artistic director Alberto Barbera and the young experts and scholars, as the La Biennale di Venezia Foundation is a publishing company as well, we are inaugurating a new series of publications, including scholars and experts in the activity of cinema critics. Among the authors, we have those who took part in the Biennale College Writing in Residence. Let me remember the magazine La Biennale di Venezia, that is published every 2 months, with important contributions, and many golden lions have written for our magazine La Biennale di Venezia. We are proud of it, Fabio. We are proud. We hosted in our latest issue the contribution by one of the masters of experimental cinema, Gian Icchian. Last but not least, allow me to mention Biennale College Cinema, the international laboratory of La Biennale di Venezia, which is really unique and that has had important results devoted to emerging directors for feature films with a micro budget. Since 2012, 20 feature films have been produced of young directors that have received awards all over the world, plus 12 works of the immersive section. Since last year, we have added Biennale College Blend, an innovative program involving the different disciplines of the La Biennale di Venezia Foundation. Biennale College, allow me to stress this, it is very nice for me to stress this, is an additional space for freedom of expression as against the film festival, devoted to new talents, and it is necessary to experiment, to express, to explore new territories where the very history of La Biennale can be supportive. For Biennale College Cinema and the Venice Production Bridge, an institution that used to finance this initiative has withdrawn without, however, creating a significant economic impact. This institution has accompanied us in part of our journey. They are abandoning us today because of a political decision, not certainly a legal decision, and certainly not a cultural decision. They are abandoning us in our journey, but La Biennale cannot accept. We are not making politics. We do not follow the noise of the drums. We are making research, international research in the field of arts. We cannot respond to their desiderata. We would renounce our principles of freedom, of expression, of research, fantasy, imagination, values that for 131 years have been characterizing this institution. 3 letters by the European Commission, the friend, the institution that has abandoned us, have the 3 letters of the Commission have received 3 detailed responses, but the same questions were being asked as if no answer had been given. Everything is in a written form, so we have written evidence of all of this. And with Fedro, we might say lupus in fabula. Superior stabat lupus. The wolf was drinking at the torrent, and downstream a sheep was drinking as well. And the wolf accused the lamb of dirtying the water he was drinking. And this, although it was impossible for him to do so. The European Commission, the wolf, sends a first letter. The European Union withdraws its funding for 2 million euros. And I mention here, I quote here the title of the HuffPost by Mattia Feltri. The 2 million of euros are withdrawn to La Biennale, and instead 6 million euros are offered to Putin in 6 months. But again, superior stabat lupus, again the wolf was upstream, again the wolf accused the lamb of slandering him many years before, and the lamb was not yet born at the time. And in the third letter, the wolf simply eats the lamb. If it was not you, probably it was your father, says the wolf to the lamb. If, from the point of view of the law, dear Deborah Rossi, the head of our legal department, if in legal terms, lacking a real motivation against the international art exhibition, the European Commission decides to punish the film festival, Biennale Cinema, probably, Alberto, it was your father who made a mistake. The activities of our cinema department will continue. The solidity of our institution enables us to do so, and we will continue to do so. We are going to do this because of the reasons I have just listed. We will find a judge in Berlin, but Fedro's court expressed itself because we consider this creative space as vitally necessary, as the objective it has is concretely supporting young people, concretely supporting the future, encouraging them to dream and to build a city, and I'm saying this in the prevailing silence, the city of the poets, certainly not the city of the European Commission. And I'm saying this to break the silence with the words by Ezra Pound, the city of poets, the city that has terraces of the color of the stars.
Grazie, Presidente.
Thank you, President. Alberto, you have the floor. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our usual appointment for the presentation of the program of the Venice International Film Festival. And we are asking again the same questions. What is the state of health of the world cinema, its trends, whether production increases or decreases? with the decrease in audiences attending theaters and so on. Having said that, from year to year, the films proposed at the Venice Film Festival only increase from 4,200 to 4,300. The brief reflection I would like to make is that this year's program reinforces the idea of cinema as an extraordinary tool for knowledge of reality. All the major problems of our contemporary world are reflected or echoed in films that are never satisfied with being simple news, a task that is for television and media in general, but are translated into stories and narratives elaborated through the most powerful language that exists, that is the language of cinema: wars, climate change, migrations, fractures and conflicts within families, the hopes and fears of adolescents, growing social tensions, the legacy of historical events of the past, which is never just the past. I do not believe that there is another artistic and expressive mode capable of exercising such a strong and passionate aesthetic, cultural, social function as cinema. Once upon a time, we used to say, cinema is the world. Today, we might say, in a trendy way, films are the hashtag of the contemporary world. For the skeptics who do exist, it would be enough to set foot in a cinema where Christopher Nolan's Odyssey is being screened these days to realize not only that cinema is not dead, but it is able to regenerate itself continuously, continuing to produce epiphanies and miracles of vision. Having said that, let's come to the titles. The number is more or less the same. We have already announced many of them in the previous days. Those of the projects invited for Final Cut in Venice, for the projects for Venice Immersive, that is a real reference in the world for this new form of creation and expression, creative expression. And then the competitive section of Orizzonti shorts, already announced. And the films that we have not yet announced are for Biennale College Cinema, the four that were produced in the 13th edition of Biennale College Cinema. You see them in alphabetical order: Demetra in Esilio, Maria Giovanna Cicciari, Tu Yana Todavia, Mexico, Gabriel Gutierrez Morales, Oishi, Emi Song, and Moonfish by Daniel Zverev for the US. Each movie is directly financed by La Biennale di Venezia with a financial contribution of 200,000 euros. And the film has to be realized to be presented in September in the following film festival. And the work only lasts for 1 year. It is a very committing challenge for those who take part in it. Let us pass to the first section, Venice Spotlight. 8 movies, accompanied by a meeting with the authors, with a conversation with the audience and the authors of the public. They participate in for the giving of an award decided by the vote of the public and supported by Armani Beauty. The opening film, the first movie and the opening movie for the spotlight section, comes from Japan, is a co-production, Canada, Japan, no, I'm wrong, Denmark, US, and Japan. It was financially supported by Disney. It is the result of 6 years of work spent following the very hard and punishing training of some sumo champions caught in various stages of their careers. An exciting behind the scenes of a tradition made up of rituals and strict discipline that dates back hundreds of years. The movie will be accompanied by one of these champions that will come from Japan. The other 7 movies: Conversation with the Sea, and I'm not pronouncing the Arab title, a Palestinian movie by Moyad Dalayan, the 4th feature film by Palestinian director. It is the story of a 60-year-old man forced to come to terms with his past after an Israeli court orders him to pay the back taxes of his son, who died in unclear circumstances 20 years earlier. Ombre all'Agua, the 4th movie by the 3rd movie by Gael Garcia Bernal, an ambitious and long-cherished project which brings together reflections on Cuba, the consequences of emigration, the crisis of masculinity, the nature of politics in Central American countries, all in the name of humor, understood as the best way to avoid the traps of didactic and tautological discourse. The first Italian movie in this selection by Roberto De Paulis, Serpenti, Snakes, for his 3rd film. De Paulis dares to make a significant departure from the Italian cinema we are used to, choosing the figure of grotesque and surreal, a register that is not exactly usual in our country. A provocative, an exciting project written with the D'Innocenzo brothers and starring a great cast: Leonardo Lidi, Alessandro Borghi, Valeria Golino, Pietro Castellitto. From Lebanon, a 3rd feature film by director Rami Kodai, Furies. George Clooney is among the executive producers. It is set against the backdrop of the economic collapse that hit Lebanon in 2019 and tells of a girl who organizes a theft in a bank to save the life of her sister suffering from cancer. From Georgia, we have just a few movies from that country. Guria, the name of the country where it is located, written by the author Levan Kogashvili with another director, Boziris Frumin. It is a black and white comedy set in a rural village in Georgia in 1992 with a look that is both ironic and participatory, direct heir to the tradition of Soviet-era Georgian comedies. Gabor Raiz is a director we know very well. He won the Orizzonti Best Film Award in 2024. He comes back with the movie Ground Floor, a grotesque comedy in which the vicissitudes of an apartment building affected by mold offer themselves to be read as a metaphor for Hungary under Orban's dictatorship. The last film is Eu Conteț, I Matter, by Alina Serban, a movie from Romania, the first film ever made by a Roma actress and director, a largely autobiographical tale that incorporates many of the stories of the orphanages where she lived or in which she works today, creating educational programs of theater and cinema with children, a story of struggle to assert oneself in a hostile society. Orizzonti is the other competition, 19 titles as every year. The competition will be opened by the new movie by Elina Marrazzi, La ragazza con la Leica, Italian movie, based on the homonymous book by Elena Janecek, built on the original sources. The film focuses on a choral story of young Jews and leftists in the 30s. They migrate from Berlin and they find refuge in Paris. Central is the figure of a partly forgotten photographer, Gerda Taro, overshadowed somehow, Gerda Taro, overshadowed by the famous photographer Robert Capa, with whom she participated in the civil war in Spain. They sent extraordinary photographs. Gerda Taro will die the last day of the civil war when she was 27 on her birthday. The other movies, in alphabetical order by director, another comeback to Venice of a Thai director who had won the award for the best film at Orizzonti with Manta Rai. The movie is The Burning Giants. It is a dystopian tale that starts with the mysterious toxic smog that affects the people of the Karen Mountains, an ethnic minority in Thailand, causing a terrible skin disease. From Poland, we have a second movie, a second film, by one of the most promising young Polish directors, Gregor Dębowski, What Belongs to the Others. And it is the story of a woman humiliated by the adverse circumstances of her existence, who paradoxically redeems herself by appropriating the life of another person. Somebody thought of Kieslowski's cinema. Another Italian movie in Orizzonti, there are 4 of them. You will discover them. The directorial debut of one of the most gifted Italian actresses, Anna Foglietta, with Una Storia, a prestigious cast, Alba Rohrwacher, Guido Caprino, Capitani, Caterina Casini, written by the director herself, and Tania Pedroni and Matteo Ferri. It tells the marital turmoil of a wife who discovers the emptiness of her existence after her daughter has left their home for her studies. La città dei vivi by Edoardo Gabriellini. It is a successful attempt to bring a novel by Nicola La Gioia to the screen. Many had tried unsuccessfully. Edoardo Gabriellini succeeded instead, changing some parts of the book and relying on a cast where Valerio Mastrandrea excels in the victim's father role. The victim is Emanuele Maria Di Stefano, who had made his debut a few years ago in a movie by Stefano Mordini, La Scuola Cattolica. From Iran, one of the 2 Iranian movies we will have in this festival, Morageb, The Falling House, in the best tradition of Iranian cinema, a film of denunciation with the master father at the center, who pushes the decision to prevent her daughter from becoming a model in a foreign country to the extreme, while their home is threatened by imminent demolition. From the US, a movie that is midway between a documentary and fiction, Robert Greene, who was in Venice 2 years ago with a movie you maybe remember, The Pavements. He's well known for a documentary of 2021, Procession. He returns to Venice with a well-rounded portrait of a socially questionable character and his exploded family, with his desire to redeem himself from a life of mistakes. And the attempt to stage the movie all the members of the family would like to realize, as they are all film fans. From Bangladesh, we have a movie by Rubaiyat Hossein, The Difficult Bride, one of the few female directors in Bangladesh, author of films that have often aroused very critical reactions from the most conservative part of the country. Her new work, her fourth film, is also set in the upper middle class of Dhaka, where the ritual of marriage preparation becomes for the protagonist an opportunity to become aware of the prison that confines women in a paradigm dominated by the male gaze and power. La Maison du Vin, the first movie by Auguste Poemo-Yangu, a filmmaker from Cameroon, based in France. The film is shot in Cameroon, and it was presented at Final Cut in Venice last year. It is the portrait of an elderly woman and her unexpected friendship of a young girl from that place, and the family lacerations caused by the emigration of those who are forced to look for work abroad. The third Italian movie in the Orizzonti section is the first work by director who has made a number of short films and documentary, Tommaso Landucci, I figli della scimmia, in a role that is unusual for him. Riccardo Scamarcio, who interprets with unexpected subtlety and nuances the struggle to support the weight of a son with a disability. And the director finds the right tone to tell a personal and family drama without ever indulging in pathos. A second movie coming from Greece, directed by Jacqueline Lentzou, A Day in the Life of Joe Chapter Phoenix, the portrait of the last hours of a rebellious and melancholic teenager, her difficult relationship with a mother, the sentimental relationship with a partner who struggles to take off, and the unexpected friendship with another girl with an angelic voice, up to the unexpected and disconcerting finale. Oasis. The film is a debut of a young German director who studied in Vienna with Michael Haneke and Rebecca Hausner. It reflects on the themes of education, the relationship between adults and adolescents, and the dynamics of marginalization in the school universe with great sensitivity and participation. From Serbia, the debut film for fiction of an appreciated documentary filmmaker, Jelena Maksimovic. The title is Until the Day Ends. It is the reconstruction, a formally sophisticated reconstruction of the student demonstrations against the regime of the president and its corruption. You certainly remember the march of the students from Belgrade to Novi Sad, which moved the conscience of the country with an aesthetically refined and radical aesthetic and transfigured and unrealistic ending. From France, we have this movie, La Moula, by Jérôme Pierrat, a screenwriter and author who has always worked on issues related to the French underworld. For this film, he chooses a mockumentary approach, fake documentary, imagining that a documentary director manages to be accepted by a group of elderly drug traffickers drug traffickers engaged in the recovery of a huge batch of cocaine arriving at the port of Marseille, and they discover that they are being watched by the police. And the movie is both funny and credible, despite its paradoxical and fictitious dimension, but it is also authentic, because the directors know this environment very well. From India, the second movie by Anuparna Roy, who won the Best Director Award in Orizzonti last year, Lovers of the Blue Night, located in the slums of Mumbai among immigrants who are forced to work for humiliating jobs, struggling to survive, and supported by a single desire, a love capable of giving meaning to their miserable existence. From France, Un Tour pour Diane, directed by a couple of directors, Anne Siro and Raphaël Balboni. They usually direct together. It is the third feature film they have directed together. It takes its cue from the protagonist's decision to avenge her mother, who was the victim of sexual abuse when she was young, without imagining the unpredictable consequences that are very different from those hoped for. The Color of the Sun by Xavier Terra is the second work by a young Japanese director set in Okinawa, where the largest American base in Southeast Asia is located. The source of many conflicts with local communities. It is a story of the friendship between two teenagers, a Japanese and the son of a base officer, that is put to test by yet another accident that is created in the city. Another debut film from Austria, Manuel Wetscher is the director, Eclipse is the title. Again, a semi-documentary approach and psychological intensive movie, the coming of age of two teenagers who share a job in an alpine resort at the end of the 1990s, between a sense of marginalization, mistrust, and prejudices for the spread of AIDS. I can say that this debut movie shows a great talent, and I look forward to his next works. Michelle Zhu, an American director, born and raised in China. She works in the US. The first movie, The Big Little Things that are in the title, it is located in China. The protagonist is unable to confess to her family that she loves another woman. An almost documentary look at the exteriors for this fiction confined to the interiors. It effectively restores the complexity of a social context that is still little known for us. Let us pass to Venice Open, a new title that up to last year was defined as out of competition. There is a special screening in Venice Open from Dai nostri inviati. Rai tells the story of the Venice Film Festival from 2001 to 2012, a ritual appointment. The films edited with the Rai materials from Teche, which reconstructs the history of the festival decade by decade, an instructive journey in our memory, a way of observing how information and television reporting have changed over time. Out of competition, 3 subcategories: series, fiction, and non-fiction. We have just one series this year for a number of reasons I will not explain. It is an Italian series, Peccato. Valerio Vestoso is the director, but it is written and interpreted by Emanuela Fanelli, well known to all of us. 6 episodes, 50 minutes each, with the participation of an incredible number of actors. Most of the protagonists of the Italian cinema decided to play a cameo in this mockumentary comedy movie. It traces the tragicomic career of Emanuela Fanelli herself from an imaginary future. I will not add anything else because it is really funny. But you can imagine this, as you know, as all of you know, this comic actress very well. Among out-of-competition movies, we have 3 short movies, extraordinary short movies. We start with a short by Maggie Gyllenhaal, the president of our jury, Flesh Impact. As you know, this year marks the centenary, the 100th anniversary of Marilyn Monroe's birth. And Maggie has made a wonderful short film starring Ellen Burstyn and Dakota Johnson. They both give body and voice with a different and imaginative way to the myth of Marilyn. We have already announced that the Golden Lion for a Time Life Achievement will be awarded before the screening of Flesh Impact. From Israel, a documentary by Avi Mograbi, a well-known author. Wild Asparagus, it is a special story. In 2011, Mograbi shot a movie, Once I Entered a Garden, some scenes of which are today exhibited in a video installation by Mograbi himself at the art exhibition. But some of the previously unseen material shot at the time has now been transformed into a short film. And Mograbi and his Arabic teacher and friend, Ali Al-Azari, set out in search of the ruins of Ali's village, Safuria, that was abandoned during the Palestinian Nakba in 1948. 24 minutes is the duration of the movie. It is very intense. The last short is the new movie by Laura Poitras and Rachel Miller. The title is They Are Here. The sentence the inhabitants of Minneapolis used to repeat during the infamous intervention by ICE in January this year that caused a strong popular reaction and a number of demonstrations against these bloody actions. There are never before broadcast images, and it is really impressive. In the past years, part of the section Venice Classics was devoted to feature movies on cinema. We have decided to take out these movies from Venice Classics and to group them in a new subcategory, films on films. 6 of them. The first is Uso per ferie, playing with the words, a tribute by Karen Di Porto to Galliano Uso, a famous Italian producer who is responsible for 50 genre films, a talent hunter who passed away at the end of last year. And it is a warm portrait full of pieces, videos from the movies he produced. Nino, un film su Rino Rota by Walter Fasano, is an affectionate and intense portrait of the greatest Italian musician, author of film music, together with Ennio Morricone, and his partnership with authors such as Fellini, Visconti, but also Zeffirelli and Coppola, with whom he won an Oscar for The Godfather Part 2. And then The Pervert's Guide to Utopias by Sophie Fiennes is the third chapter of the reflections on the great Slovenian philosopher Slavoj Žižek, a great cinephile, who wrote many books of philosophy applied to cinema. And Žižek analyzes sequences of famous Hollywood films to induce us to think about the contemporary world and the role of utopias. Joie de Vivre, the documentary by Luca Guadagnino, look at the duration, 7 hours, but you will remain hooked to your chair. It is an extraordinary documentary, an analysis, not of all the movies, otherwise it would last 14 hours, of many of the works of Bernardo Bertolucci, an analysis made by Guadagnino himself and many colleagues, critics, directors, a way not only to analyze his work, but also to make Bertolucci the litmus test for understanding and interpreting modern cinema, as well as the role and function of film criticism, its inadequacy, and its future. A really fantastic movie, passionating movie. I said Giuseppe. Clearly, it is Bernardo Bertolucci, not Giuseppe. Although the name of Giuseppe Bertolucci is really part of the movie for the role of the brother of Bernardo Bertolucci. Yves Montmayor, he makes many movies on other directors. It is Suzuki Teijum, one of the major authors who have contributed to renewing Japanese genre cinema, Yakuza movies, since the second half of the 50s, when they decided to stop their collaboration for his excessive creativity. And the last movie in this subsection, Films on Films, another long movie by Yon Fan, a great Hong Kong filmmaker who has been in Venice several times. In 3 hours and a half, he retraces his movies and the history of Hong Kong itself through his 15 movies made between 1984 and 2024. His personal story as an eclectic and refined artist, but also the story of the great stars with whom he has worked and the history of Hong Kong itself. Another category of Venice Open out of competition non-fiction films. A lot of them, the number increases every year because the quality of the value of the documentaries increases and improves every year. The first film is a peculiar movie by Francesco Carrozzini, Be Brave. It is the first documentary on Roberto Rosso, the founder of Diesel. Renzo Rosso again. It is the first Italian feature film entirely worked in AI. Almost all of it made with AI. Also, the sequences that are not made by AI, they were then reprocessed and modified by using AI for a mere desire for artistic experimentation. The production company, Our Films, has worked over a year and a half to build an indigenous and effective workflow for the production of images in AI without abdicating total creative control over every single element of the film, which is entrusted to the director and his collaborators, who have worked with the same provocative and original spirit as the protagonist of the movie, Renzo Rosso. Russell Crowe is the director of the second movie, What Love Builds, a musical movie, a concert film, and a long autobiographical confession by Russell Crowe, who traces his beginnings and his career, claiming the privileged place occupied by music in his life. He continues to make concerts all over the world. Again, the privileged place occupied by music in his life, with a declared predilection for this role, the role of the musician, as against his role as an actor. Many songs taken from his live concerts. He will be presenting the movie in Venice. Burgundy is a documentary by two well-known authors who had a great success a few years ago with a film called The Truffle Hunters. The same method of observation, not unaware of Weizmann's lesson, the two directors focus on Burgundy, and in particular in a small community of winemakers who operate outside the conventions and are animated by a deep passion for their craft, for the natural rhythms of wine production and nature. Alex Gibney, I invite you to look at the duration of the movie, 4 hours. It is centered on Elon Musk. Alex Gibney, a great director of documentaries who won an Oscar for the best documentary in 2007. He traces the whole career, the contradictions and the conditioning power that is centralized in the hands of a single man, considered a genius of capitalist entrepreneurship, but also a dangerous technocrat with moral scruples. Amos Gitai, his latest movie is The Road to Jericho, a new chapter in Gitai's reflection on the situation in Israel, with 3 levels that converge in a sort of visual poem that is also, as usual, a political statement, with both Jewish and Palestinian actors acting together on the same stage, unpublished fragments of an interview with Rabin he had made before his death, excerpts by famous anti-war authors, ending with images of a West Bank country populated by a community of 300 Bedouins that the settlers are trying to eradicate. Citizen Osama is one of the documentaries produced by the collective Masharawi Fund for Films and Filmmakers in Gaza, has produced and realized in real time during the Israeli army's invasion of Gaza. What we are proposing is following during the invasion a photojournalist who did not leave Gaza, who continued to document the events while witnessing the daily trickle of deaths of his colleagues, journalists and photographers who were transformed into targets by the Israeli army. Barbara Koppel is a name that is well known for many of you. She's a great documentary director. She won 2 Oscars for Allen County in USA in 1977 and American Dream in 1999. This is a more recent documentary. It is the account of the largest and longest strike by American riders in recent history to obtain less back-breaking work shifts, decent wage conditions, and the right to assistance that has been denied so far. A film that, unfortunately, applies to all countries with the exploitation of labor. Viktor Kosakowski is well known to Venice. He has been to Venice several times. He works on nature and environment. He returns this year with a film documenting the consequences of the storm Vaya that in 2018 felled 14 million trees, most of them in the Veneto region in the northeastern part of Italy. It starts from a project by the botanical scientist Stefano Mancuso, who invites us to explore the intelligence of plants, explaining how trees are able to perceive, to learn, and to communicate. From Belarus, a country we know very little of, we have a film that is a collective film, a collective world, signed by Andrei Kutsila, a director who was forced to migrate for political reasons. The title is Letters from the Silenced Country, a movie that documents from the inside with audio and video materials obtained clandestinely, but also with filmed or animated reconstructions, the extreme violence of the longest and most overt dictatorship in the European continent, which does not hesitate to resort to torture and murder for its political opponents. We know very little about it. Another very long movie, 330 minutes, 5 hours and a half, a biography, a very passionate biography on an author we all know, Jorge Luis Borges, one of the greatest writers of the 20th century. He changed literature. Mariano Linas, who is a member of the Argentinian collective El Pampero. In the past, we presented 2 movies produced by this collective. Laura Citarella is part of the collective with Tranchelenque. Mariano Linas had contributed to the script of Argentina 1985 by Santiago Mitre in competition in 2022. It is not a biography. It is a biography, but it is a movie full of quotations, not only from Borges, but of all kinds, literary, musical, cinematographic, geographical, etc. A passionating movie The length is characteristic of the documentaries. Another movie that is 355 minutes long, second part of another documentary that had the same duration. And last year it was extremely successful in the US in particular. One of the 10 best movies according to the New York Times. This is the second part. The exile of the journalists who have to escape from Putin's Russia after managing a counter-information channel, and to avoid being arrested, they had to start a journey that seems like an odyssey in the European countries to reach the US to continue the counter-information effort they were making against Putin. Boat builders. Wiseman is no longer with us, unfortunately. But there are many directors who seem to refer to his lesson in terms of documentary. Among them, Luke Lorenzen, who spent long months with a small community in the coastal city of Maine, with people dedicated to building quality boats with traction and manual methods, a microcosm of the American working class that clashes with the demands of a world that is less and less respectful of men and their rhythms. Sergei Lonitsa, one of the many important documentary directors. He was in Venice many times in the past. The movie is very long, 3 hours and a half. The story is quite peculiar. In the 1970s, the Italian Communist Party decided to send a group of Italian operators to the Soviet Union to film the successes of the Soviet Empire. They couldn't imagine what would happen when they came home. The Communist Party realized that very little of what they collected was used, because rather than celebrating the success of the Soviet Union, it was like an anthropological fresco of a very different country with so many contradictions, the discovery of a universe of populations that are different in culture and traditions, the opposite of the idea of a great modern empire Russia was trying to convey. All these movies were preserved in the archive of AMOD, the audiovisual archive of the labor's movement in Rome. And they asked Loznitsa to edit these material in a movie that is a journey in the Russian Empire that has largely disappeared. An unexpected documentary. You know Takashi Miike, the author of splatter atmospheres in his movies. He dedicates this documentary to kabuki theater, the most abstract and traditional form of theater in Japan. He follows for 1 year the long preparation of an actor who should succeed in impersonating the most important figure of the traditional theater, kabuki theater. From the UK, we have a Queer Edward II by Theo Rollason. The exciting and unprecedented backstage made during the filming of Edward II in 1991, the provocative reinterpretation of Shakespearean drama by Derek Jarman, the beloved English director, who made his homosexuality a tool in the fight against prejudice and the backwardness of puritanical and conservative English society. Another musical film, Oasis, Don't Look Back in Anger, a film we have heard about recently. It is the exciting story that follows the two brothers who have not spoken to each other for 12 years, that dissolved one of the most famous rock bands in England at the time. But after so many years, they unexpectedly reconcile, and they start rehearsing for the formidable world tour that would follow. The film follows the rehearsals and the tour and the impact of the tour on the fans of Oasis, who again can find their idols reproposing the songs they loved so much years before. The Gallagher brothers have promised they will be in Venice. Simon Liang, we are still doubtful whether to place this movie among fiction or non-fiction movies. It would deserve perhaps a category for itself. The title is Dust, and it is the 11th title in the chronology dedicated to the Buddhist monk who walks at an incredible slow pace. I tried to measure the time it takes for this monk, to take one step, 25-30 seconds without losing his balance. He goes around San Sebastian and its surroundings, walking at this very slow pace, and we are witnessing this. Everest, The Other Side, is a documentary by a couple of directors, Elizabeth Chai Vasarely and Jimmy Chin. They are famous for their previous movie, Free Solo. They had won the Oscar a few years ago, I don't remember. They have specialized in documenting sporting feats at the limit of human possibilities. This is the first, so far the only successful attempt to ski down the terrible north face of Everest. Imagine what this entailed, the failed attempts, some of them with terrible consequences. And these attempts are followed by Jimmy Chin, who participates in the sporting feat, and there are extraordinary images of this descent on the slopes of the Everest. But it also tells us about the will to reflect the motivations of the protagonists of these performances. And the last movie in the non-fiction section is a documentary that is really extraordinary by Wim Wenders, dedicated to the greatest living architect, Peter Zumthor, author of just a few works, but very little known to the general public, but all extraordinary works. Zumthor made these works that are small in size, and this is perhaps the reason why the largest public doesn't know him. But his latest work, his most ambitious work, is the new home for the permanent collection of the LACMA Museum in Los Angeles, which opened to the public just a few months ago. Vendors who had met Zumthor for a short documentary that had taken part in the architecture exhibition in 2012 followed the architect over the years, and he made this documentary reconstructing the many works, the not numerous works that Zumthor has created in his career. Here we are at the last subcategory of out of competition, fiction films, 11 of them. We start with the closing film for the film festival, already announced, Dio ride by Giovanni Veronese, with Pierfrancesco Favino, Silvio Orlando, and many others, Paolo Rossi, etc., Carlo Cecchi. It has already been described. In alphabetical order, we start with Gianni Amelio. Nessun Dolore is the title of the movie. He has been in competition at Venice 8 times. He has won a Golden Lion for Best Film in 1998, and he had already been awarded Best Director. And it is therefore not surprising that for his new film, he has chosen to appear out of competition. The protagonist of the film is Alessandro Borghi, together with Valeria Golino and Valerio Mastandrea. I am not telling you about the story of the movie, not to spoil it. It is the story of a man who takes on all the pain in the world for the death of a child, a very young illegal immigrant in Rome, for whom he feels responsible. You will discover the progression of this work. From the Philippines, the movie by Love Diaz, who was in Venice in the past, who attends the Western festivals. The title of the movie is Let Us Through, Dear Ancestors. Is set in the late 17th, early 17th century in the Philippines during the expansion of Spanish colonization in the Philippines, when Catholic churches and fortresses were being built that radically changed the territory and the life of Filipino citizens, causing the death of many of them who participated in the construction of these works. The film is told with the usual style of Love Diaz, between abstraction and realism that might be defined as immersive. Father Joe, signed by Barthélemy Grossman, written and you will seen and conditioned by Luc Besson, with an eye to the rhythm and implausibility of Japanese manga, but directed by one of his collaborators. The film is a pyrotechnic portrait of an avenging priest who steals from the wealthy drug traffickers to donate to the poor, an ecclesiastical Robin Hood armed to the teeth. Note the presence of two actors such as Kiefer Sutherland and as the priest, and Al Pacino, who is the drug trafficker, clearly. Another film out of competition. I am grateful to these authors who frequently come to Venice for accepting to present their last production out of competition. Mario Martone was five times in Venice. He won the Grand Jury Prize with his debut film, Morte di un matematico napoletano. He's coming back to Venice with the transposition of the novel by Domenico Starnone with the same title. It is largely shot inside an apartment where Tony Servillo has to spend a few days in the company of a 5-year-old nephew who forces him to come to terms with himself, with the past that returns in the form of ghosts, and with his present as a successful illustrator who has chosen, however, to move to Milan and comes back to Naples. The following movie is the new work by Cornel Mondruccio. He was in Venice in the past as well. Place to Be is the title. It is the latest interpretation so far by Ellen Burstyn, who is 92. She will be at the film festival in Venice. We will have a chance to see her in this movie with Taika Waititi, who is known as a director, but who is acting here. He works in Hollywood. She's an elderly lady who sets out to return a leaded pigeon to her home, but he doesn't want to leave her. Taika is the occasional travel companion with whom she will develop a form of contrasted friendship. The next movie, co-produced by Iraq, Sweden, France, and the United Arab Emirates, is the work of a Kurdish director, Iraqi and Kurdish director, Alkwat Mustafa, and the title of the movie is No Paradise If You Are Killed by a Woman. A nice title. It is shot in Hollywood style. It is a war movie that puts together, shot by an Iraqi in Europe, that intertwines action cinema and human drama through the figure of a Peshmerga sniper during the Mosul siege. She comes back to fight with Peshmerga to find her sister who had been kidnapped by ISIS during the Mosul siege. It is an action movie, very enjoyable. The objective is paying a tribute to the heroic efforts of the Kurdish people, and Peshmerga are often forgotten. Sabu is a Japanese author we know very well. His latest movie is Arrested Memories. It is totally funded and shot in Taiwan with Japanese staff. There is a very famous Chinese actor, Ethan Wan. It is a tribute to the Hong Kong gangster movies in the 80s and 90s, shot in the hyperkinetic style of Sabu's earlier films, imbued with irony and grotesque, very pleasant movie. The protagonist, a police movie, is an investigator who is losing his memory while investigating the kidnapping of the son of a wealthy Japanese entrepreneur settled in Taipei. Another comeback we are very glad of, Paul Schrader with The Basics of Philosophy. Another Schrader's Precious Molar Tales, a sort of logical sequel to the ending of Master Gardener, on the possibility of redemption from the mistakes of the past. Jack Houston is a philosophy professor who teaches a course on Schopenhauer at university when a figure from his past reappears and forces him to come to terms with a murky episode that he would prefer to forget. From France, a film that came very late during the selection, Un Bon Avocat, directed by Tristan Seguela. I think it is his third, fourth feature film, interpreted by an important actor of the French comedy, Laurent Lafitte, together with Anthony Bajon, another young French actor. Lafitte interprets the lawyer referred to in the title, who has an addiction to cocaine, unfortunately, and has to come to terms with this dependency, but also with the threats of the criminals he usually defends, and that instead this time might create difficulties for him. He will be helped to overcome his crisis by this young stage worker. Last movie out of competition is another French movie, Jupiter. It is the third film by Alexandre Zmia, a tense political thriller that could not be more topical. It tells the story of a newly elected French president forced to make a crucial decision following the Russian nuclear ultimatum. An extraordinary cast with Dominique Blanc, André Dussolier, Cédric Kahn, Reda Kateb, Denise Ménochet, and many others. A very tense movie and extremely topical, unfortunately. Here we are at the most expected section of the movie, Venice competition 83, 20 movies. The opening is entrusted to Dennis Boyle's film Ink, an irresistible rise of the British tabloid The Sun, which was purchased by Robert Murdoch and directed by Larry Lambert. They transformed this almost bankrupt newspaper into a success. It was one of the most sold newspapers in England. Casey Affleck, first time in competition in Venice. He's also a very good director. The title of the movie is Company, for the first time in competition in Venice. Again, this is his fourth feature film. I will not tell you anything because I do not want to spoil it. It is a story of mise en abîme, many stories germinating one inside the others in situations that span over 1 century and placed in remote villages of the U.S. with the final surprise. A film that has genre parts, but with a very literary and sensitive approach. Ali Asghari, an Iranian director who studied at the Centro Sperimentale in Rome. He was in Venice twice in competition for Orizzonti. This time, he returns in the main competition with this movie, A Bit of Light, a painful film that gives shape and substance to the feelings of deep disillusionment and bitterness experienced by many opponents of the Iranian regime, waiting for a change that never seems to come. Ideas that are transferred into a personal story of the protagonist of the movie. I will not tell you more about this. but we are submerged in everyday life. Marco Becchis is a comeback to Venice on the places he attended for many reasons. Ritorno a Buenos Aires. Almost 40 years have passed after the Argentine dictatorship started, and 27 years after the film Garage Olimpo, an autobiographical movie that told the story of the inmates of this prison in Argentina, where they closed the opposers to the Argentinian generals. Becchis had been for months a prisoner in this institution. He was the son of a Fiat engineer, so he was repatriated, was sent home and survived, but he goes back to notorious places of that event, and he tells about a former internee who is called to testify in the trial against the torturers. There is a lot of an autobiographical approach in this film. And then Stéphane Brisé, who comes back to Venice with the fourth chapter of the tetralogy on the world of work, with Álvaro Orvácher in the role of a new head of human resources of a large insurance company, whose boss, Vincent Landon, demands excessive performance goals from all the employees. And I let you imagine the problems, the conflicts, the contradictions in this movie, Un bon petit soldat. It tells the story of current companies. Il fuoco che ti porti dentro by Edoardo De Angelis, second time in competition in Venice, and it's the transposition of the novel memoir of by Antonio Franchini. In the film, Vanessa Scalera impersonates impressively the ruthless and comic portrait of a possessive and hostile mother, a concentrate of the Napolitan spirit from which her children had tried to escape by migrating to the north. A Danish movie directed by an Egyptian director, female director, who works in Denmark. She is for the first time in Venice. It is the story. The story is set in the immediate post-war period. It is the story of a waitress who sees her dreams of marrying the rich entrepreneur for whom she works, threatened by the shadow of an episode from the recent past that she had tried to hide. Werner Herzog, his comeback, you heard a lot about his movie, Bucking Faster, an inversion of terms. Herzog has always accustomed us to bizarre, whimsical, non-standard characters, both in documentaries and fiction films. This is true for the protagonists of this movie. They inspired to the Chaplin sisters, who became famous in the 80s for their perfect symbiosis, to the point of being able to synchronize their gestures, their speech, and they were really impressive. They also shared loves and passions. The two twins are interpreted by Mara and Kate Rooney, and they masterfully identify with the two real sisters. We have back in Venice in competition Cédric Kahn, 1518, A Place to Heal. It is the story of the experience of a hospital world doctor who treats adolescents with psychiatric problems. Cédric Kahn, the actor himself, plays the doctor and directs the whole department. Lots of girls and boys who seem to have done nothing in life but acting for the screen in this fiction movie. Dao, I do not know whether you know the Dao project. It is a unique project in the history of cinema, a very ambitious, unprecedented experiment trying to recreate in southern Ukraine an authentic Soviet research institute that was creating at the end of the 20s, and where the most important scientists of the time were grouped to carry on their research work, but they had to come to terms with the regime that instead was trying to involving them in the creation of military objects. In this rebuilt building, many films were shot in the past. They circulated a number of international festivals. And the latest and most ambitious film, Dao, the shooting starting in 2006, and you see the film only today after very long processing. It is the biography of the greatest scientist in Soviet times, Lev Landau, a physicist. His surname was Dao. It is the physicist who reluctantly contributed to the creation of the first Soviet atomic bomb that detonated in 1949. The curiosity for this film is that some of the protagonists are real scientists who inhabited in this institution that was rebuilt by the director, Ilya Kazanovsky, a Russian director who is living in Germany today. As I was saying, some of the protagonists of the movie are real scientists. Landau is interpreted by the famous Greek conductor Theodor Kourentzis. You will discover other artists participating in this movie. It is a long movie, the longest movie in this competition, 3 hours, more than 3 hours, 210 minutes. And besides the personal biography of Lev Landau as a scientist and humanizer, he's shared his time between research on physics and women, whom he fell in love with. It is also a movie on the efforts to resist the pressure of the Russian government to transform pure research into applied science for military purposes. Coreda, we had a movie in competition in Cannes, the second film in this season by Coreda. It had a long preparation. It is adaptation for cinema of a manga of one of the most famous manga authors, Tatsuki Fujimoto, who had a great success in 2021. It is shot in 35 millimeters, and it is the coming of age of two teenage girls who became friends by drawing their first manga at school and follow the dream of becoming professionals in the industry that is one of the largest Japanese industries in the country. Another expected comeback, the return of another filmmaker with Park Chan-wook, one of the greatest Korean filmmakers, not so productive. The film is Possible Love by Lee Chan-dong. Lee Chan-dong won the Silver Lion in 2002 with Oasis. This new film is inspired by one of the chapters of Kieslowski's Decalogue and is produced by Netflix Korea. Another comeback, one of the most appreciated and loved directors in Venice, Martin McDonagh. He was in competition with his previous two movies. He comes back with his latest work, Wild Horse 9, interpreted by John Malkovich and Sam Rockwell, Steve Buscemi, Tom Waits, and Parker Posey, and other actors. Malkovich and Sam Rockwell are two unlikely CIA agents in action in Chile on the eve of the coup against Pinochet. I will not tell you anything about the story because it is really surprising and incredible. Well, as for comebacks, Nanni Moretti had not been in Venice since 1889, he says. We will not mention the reasons. I said 1889, instead it is 1989, clearly, not so many years. You will all remember the reasons for his non-participating. We will not mention them. It was the year of Palombella Rossa. We really hope that this return can serve to make people forgive and perhaps forget the mistake we made 37 years ago. Prime Time by Lance Oppenheim, his first fiction film, a young director who has made successful documentaries. This film is the true story of the unscrupulous host of a disturbing reality show by NBC in 2006. The title was To Catch a Predator. The attempt to reveal and attract through the network pedophiles, arresting them. You can have your own judgment on this type of procedure. It is an extraordinary movie interpreted by Pattinson, who will be in Venice and who is also the producer of the movie, together with A24, and also co-produced by Ari Aster, another loved director. I've lost the figure of how many Italian movies we have. We have 5 Italian movies. Another movie by Andrea Pallauro, The Echo Chamber. You know, it is the latest screenplay by Bernardo Bertolucci, a screenplay that is largely autobiographical, and finally it becomes a film. That is all Bertolucci and his suffering in the last years of his life, but it is also, and above all, a film by Andrea Pallauro, who respectfully appropriates the script by Bernardo and makes it his own with the help of three great performers, Luca Marinelli, Alicia Vikander, and Susan Sarandon. Nicolas Pariser, he was never in Venice before. His film is Un peu avant minuit. He bursts into the competition with this generational film, the story of a contemporary intellectual who is forced to rethink his relationship with the women in his past in the light of the relations he and his friends artists had with women that were against, conflicting with modern sensitivity. A great cast, Chiara Mastroianni, Melville Pupod, Golshifteh Farahani, Leonid Simaga, and many others. Another Italian movie, L'Estranea by Paolo Strippoli last year. The midnight screening of his second film, La Valle dei Sorrisi, had sparked international interest. It was sold in 30 countries all over the world. A very young director, 33 years old. The third movie, he loves genre cinema. There are horror elements in this film, quite apparent, but it represents a great leap in terms of maturity if compared to the past. A movie with a great cast. We have great expectations for this movie. Jasmine Trinca, Romana Maggiora Vergano, Adriano Giannini, Valeria Bruni Tedeschi. Another comeback, Shinja Tsukamoto. He was in Venice many times. This is his most ambitious and solid film from the point of view of the production budget. Mr. Nelson, Did You Kill People? It is draws inspiration from a real story, the theme of war again, or rather the trauma suffered by the soldiers who fought in wars. In this case, it is the authentic story of a Vietnam veteran who became homeless on his return and then dedicated the rest of his life to preaching against the war for young Japanese and Vietnamese students. The last movie and the last film in competition, Florian Zeller, another comeback after Il Figlio in 2022. The title of the movie is Bunker, with the stellar cast with Javier Bardem and Penelope Cruz, playing a couple of established Spanish professionals who moved to London. She works for a publishing company. He's an architect, a famous architect, and their relationship is disrupted by two facts. I will not tell you anything more. A neighbor opens a hole in the wall of the adjacent house, and the architect is offered to design an atomic-proof bunker for a multi-billionaire. And here we stop with the list of the movies for this year. I have to thank many people. We wouldn't be here without the support in this long process of preparation that started with the selection at the end of last year. Allow me to thank the president of la Biennale, Pietrangelo Buttafuoco, who left me full freedom and guaranteed his trust and his support. And he represents a very good example of integrity and consistency. We all need this. I want to thank the general manager, Andrea Del Mercato, a solid, essential reference on which you can rely in any circumstance. I want to thank Deborah Rossi, who is now the head of the new ambitious project of the International Archive for Contemporary Arts in ASAC. Of course, I thank my double, Angela Savoldi, whom many of you know and with whom they interact even more than with me. She spends days and nights in a dialogue with our counterparts abroad. Without her, I would never come to the end of this work. And then all the colleagues who have joined me in the long and demanding process of selecting the films. I won't name them all. Allow me to mention some key figures. Pascal Dio, who governs the works of the Venice production bridge with his personality. Savina Narotti, who chairs our experiment, mentioned by President Buttafuoco, Biennale College Cinema. Michel Reillac and Lise Rosenthal, who are the precious reference for Venice Immersive, successful section. And last but not least, the girls, because there is just one boy working for the cinema office of La Biennale. They are mostly girls. They make it work in such a commendable way that it deserves the admiration of all our interlocutors, Italians and abroad. Allow me to thank Paolo Lughi and his staff of the press office, through whom all the communication of the festival has to pass. A sincere and grateful and affectionate thank you to you all. See you on the 2nd of September in Lido for the film festival. Thank you all. Thank you, Alberto. I invite again President Buttafuoco. You have seen the wings opening thanks to the art by Emanuele Fior, who tells us about the international exhibition with these graphics. This is a very clear sign of this region, the Veneto region. Tito Livio told us what are the qualities of God Quirinus. This God is governing the city, the civilian existence, and we are celebrating today on behalf of La Fondazione La Biennale di Venezia. I want to wish to send our best wishes to Sergio Mattarella, our president, beloved president. These open wings, if Fabio Lughi allows me, will bring us to a very short video that tells us about the film festival by Alberto Barbera, the exhibition of Biennale Cinema, the film festival of the city of Venice, which is a pride element in an exhibition, in an institution which is defending our freedom. Thank you all.